What's up, guys? UFC Saudi Arabia just wrapped up and the card was alright. Definitely concluded with a banger of a main event, but I would give it like a 5 out of 10, something like that. There were some good performances. I did like the Michael Page fight, even though a lot of people thought it was boring. I understand why, but I enjoy watching his style. But starting with the main event, Nassourdine Imavov TKOs Israel Adesanya in the second round. I try to tell everybody, so many people doubted me. Man, so many people saying I don't know what I was talking about, all this sort of stuff. Now, I didn't think Imavov was going to knock him out. I thought the fight was going to go to a decision. But the fact that he was able to find that shot, overhand to the chin, as Adesanya switched stances, I don't know why he did that. He completely gave the opening to Imavov and got KO'd for it. Not KO'd, TKO'd. You see, as soon as Israel Adesanya switched from southpaw to orthodox, Imavov attacked with that combination and the fight was over. Now, a lot of people were saying early stoppage, eye poke, stuff like that. I don't agree. I mean, the eye poke could have bothered him, but he didn't take any time to recover. I mean, he literally, 5 seconds, he told the ref to get off. Almost like Alex Pereira with Abdelwahab. And eye pokes are tough to just fight through like that, right? If the eye poke was actually bad, he would take time to recover. But the fact that he didn't tells me that it probably wasn't that bad of an eye poke, and he felt comfortable to just continue to fight. So who knows, it's speculation, but given the results of him not wanting time to recover means that it most likely wasn't anything. And then the finish. So I do think the finish was fine. I don't think he was going to get out of the ground and pound. He had his back taken, eating shots. I mean, that uppercut, that looked like Adesanya got KO'd. He started covering up. Imavov had his back. The fight was over. He wasn't going to go anywhere. And I don't want to see Adesanya take that much damage. I mean, he's been through wars. I mean, the guy went through all those Alex Pereira fights, the Kelvin Gastelum war, ate all those shots by Sean Strickland and Dricus. He was getting finished there regardless. Whether the referee allows 10 more punches or he stops it there and allows Adesanya to walk away with not as much brain damage because he got dropped twice, pretty much. Like, the overhand hurt him. I guess it would count as a knockdown. And then the uppercut just nearly flatlined him. There was no reason to continue it even further. And it just goes to show that Nassourdine Imavov is one of the best middleweights. The middleweight division is now established with a new era. Dricus, Strickland, Imavov, I would say Caio Borralho, Hamza Chimaev. These are your new middleweights. The Adesanyas and the Whitakers and the Cannoniers, Vittoris, those guys are declining or they're losing to the better fighters now, which happens in every single weight class. This is why it goes into the whole conversation about who's the greatest in each division. The new guard replaces the old guard. And I wish the best to Adesanya. He's had an amazing career if he continues to fight. I think he's always going to be a good fighter, but it was an amazing performance by Nassourdine Imavov. Adesanya looked good in the first round. He was throwing out a lot of kicks and stuff, but it doesn't seem like he could take as good of a punch as he used to. And his defense wasn't really all there. Now, I'm not going to say his defense wasn't there because he's declined, but it could also be that these fighters already understand how to beat him, right? They understand his boxing. His boxing is his weakest part of his striking game. I've been saying it for a long time. His kicks are amazing. He has good movement. He has good footwork. But his boxing defense is just not all there, man. Sean Strickland showed everybody how to box with Israel Adesanya. And I think most of these fighters today will be able to do the same thing. I mean, even Dricus was capitalizing on that stuff, and you have to be a well-rounded fighter. That's what separated Imavov from some of the other opponents of Adesanya. This is why I said Imavov, if Adesanya were to beat him, would be one of his biggest wins in his career, because Imavov is one of the few truly skilled, well-rounded fighters. He's good in a lot of areas of the game. He's a very good technical and dangerous striker. He has good wrestling. He has good top control. He has good transitions, good submissions. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He's the new generation of the middleweight division. The Adesanyas, Alex Pereiras, Robert Whitakers, Paulo Costas, even Marvin Vettori is well-rounded, but he's like a jack of all trades. He's like average or just above average in everything. His skill level is just so much lower than guys like Imavov. Kelvin Gastelum, when he fought Adesanya, was mainly just a striker. He went back to his wrestling later in his career. Yoel Romero, although well-rounded, didn't really fight that way against Adesanya. If he did, I think it would have been a much more difficult fight for Adesanya, but it barely even was a fight to begin with. So when you look at guys like Imavov and Dricus and Caio Borralho, these guys are just way more well-rounded than the guys that Adesanya was fighting. So if he beat any three of these guys, they would be some of his best wins. 100%, even in a non-title fight. But who should they fight next? Maybe Hamza's going to fight in the summer against the winner of Dricus and Strickland, but Imavov said he doesn't want to wait too long. He said he would fight someone else. Maybe the loser of Dricus and Strickland would be great, especially if Dricus defends the belt, because Imavov 100% would want to get that fight back with Sean Strickland. Who would win the rematch? I don't know. Both guys are in their prime. When they fought the first time, neither of them were in their prime, so I think it would be a good fight. But I don't think Strickland would be able to fight him the same way he did, right? He was very aggressive. It'd be a lot more of a chess match, back and forth striking striking battle between them two, just because Strickland's hard to hold down if Imavov tries to wrestle him. As for Israel Adesanya, I don't know. It really depends on what he wants to do. I mean, he's a legend, and it feels bad for Adesanya because he's an all-time great, right? He had a fantastic career, second greatest middleweight of all time, all those title defenses, amazing fights, especially his come up to the title. When he was a rising contender, the guy was so fun to watch for many of those fights. The first Robert Whittaker win was insane, and the legendary Alex Pereira rivalry may be the greatest rivalry in middleweight history. Even though it was only 2 fights, it did spread out in 2 different sports, which is crazy. I think by the time Adesanya retires, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. For sure, right? 100%. He's a very technical striker. I'm talking like he's already retired. But he could go up to light heavyweight and fight Yuri Prohaska or have some fun fights. I think Adesanya at this point should just go for the fun fights and then retire. And then we go to the co-main event. Michael Venom Page defeats Shara Magomedov by unanimous decision. I kind of enjoyed this fight. It wasn't super action-packed, like there wasn't a lot of strikes that were landing. I mean, for like a round and a half, Shara did not even land a single strike to the head. That is crazy. How good is Michael Page at striking, man? I mean, it's super frustrating. You can't hit the guy, and he's snapping your head back with the jab, lunging with those big right hands from distance, even elbows too, wheel kicks to the head, crazy footwork, amazing feints. He was frustrating Shara with just feints alone. Like, Shara didn't even know what to do for most of that fight. He was throwing out strikes that weren't even getting close to landing in moments. Like, there was that one time where he was throwing those jabs and left hooks, and Michael Venom Page was smiling, running away from those punches, knowing that they weren't going to land. Like, you don't throw those shots when Michael Page is that far away from you, you know? The distance management was 100% controlled by Michael Venom Page. It was such a technical striking match, more of a chess match. He did land some big shots. He landed the right hand, he landed some elbows, but I don't know if Michael Page's power is overrated. I can't say that. I mean, he crushed some guy's skull. Like, is it just everybody he's fighting has a good chin? Because he fought Kevin Holland, who we know he has a decent chin, right? Shara doesn't really get hit like that, right? He doesn't get knocked down. He really hasn't eaten the biggest shots, so maybe he has a great chin too. Ian Gary took one big punch and then just wrestled the whole fight, and shout out to Ian Gary, even though that was one of the most boring fights. It was very intelligent because Michael Page has outstruck everybody he's fought in the UFC. Actually, in all of MMA. Yeah, even Douglas Lima, he outstruck everybody he's fought. He outstruck him in the rematch. And he might be regarded as one of the best strikers in the UFC, even though he only has 3 UFC fights, which is crazy. I mean, would you guys think that he's one of the best strikers? He hasn't been in the UFC that long, so it seems kind of silly to say that already, but who can outstrike this guy? But I don't think we're ever going to get that Stephen Thompson fight. Who else could he fight, though? He says he's going down the welterweight again. He looked good for middleweight, too. But he said he felt different at middleweight. There's just the added weight. Wasn't something he's used to. You know, he's used to being slimmer. If that's him feeling off at a higher weight class, that's insane. Because Shara a fast middleweight too. Maybe they could do Michael Page versus Vicente Luque or Jeff Neal. Something like that. Well, Jeff Neal is probably going to fight someone higher ranked than him. I'd like to see him fight another ranked opponent because his Ian Gary fight was very, very close. And in fact, Michael Page arguably could have won the fight if he didn't get up after he was on top of Gary on the ground. Like, if he just kept top position, he probably could have won that fight. But because he wanted to make it a striking match and make it entertaining for the audience, Ian Gary wrestled him, took him to the ground, and he won the fight. And Ian Gary is one of the best welterweights in the world. So he's going to be top 15 in both welterweight and middleweight in only 3 fights in the UFC. That is crazy. I mean, the perfect fight would be Stephen Thompson, but they'll never fight each other. I guess Vicente Luque looked good in his last fight, so that could be a good one. And as for Shara Magomedov, you could do him versus Michelle Pereira. Then Sergei Pavlovich, shadowboxing to a decision, pretty much. It's crazy because Jairzinho and Rozenstruik landed 14 total strikes after 2 rounds. In the 3rd round, he started throwing more. You know, he needed to get the win. He got rocked, 3 times in the fight? Got dropped once by a right hand. There was that one left hook, I think it was in the 3rd round, where Sergei literally slaps him across the face with the left. And it looked like Rozenstruik went out on his feet for like a split second. His hands dropped and his head leaned back. I'm like, oh, he just got KO'd. And he wakes up and it's like, there's a very unusual reaction to getting hit. He got rocked by the jab. Dude, Sergei Pavlovich hit so hard. I don't blame Rozenstruik for not going forward, honestly. Who would? I mean, who wants to move forward on this guy? Tom Aspinall did. All right, that's why Tom Aspinall's the GOAT. That guy went forward, ran right into Sergei Pavlovich and knocked him out. Look at the way Rozenstruik just fought him. That's how most heavyweights are going to be fighting Pavlovich. Yeah, not much to really say about this fight. Sergei had a lot of top control. Didn't really wrestle that much to get the fight to the ground, but even though every single round, he eventually did get top control somehow. The first round, they kind of like stumbled and scrambled to the ground after a striking exchange. And the second round, he dropped Rozenstruik Rozenstruik and then went to the ground. But it's a win that Sergei Pavlovich needed. And honestly, it was up to Rozenstruik to bring the fight to Sergei because he's losing the fight. If you're losing the fight, you have to try to win. This even goes with the Israel Adesanya title defenses against Yoel Romero and Paulo Costa and, Vittori and Jared Kenya, all these guys. Like, you have to bring the fight to the guy who's winning. You have to try to win, right? Now, it's not like Pavlovich was just throwing jabs and leg kicks. He did throw some big bombs, and most of them missed, but man, he was trying to take his head off with some of those punches. It's absurd how much power this guy has. But it's a good win for Sergei to bring back some of his confidence. Even though it was against a number 9 ranked fighter, I think Sergei Pavlovich versus Jailton Almeida, that's the fight you do next. You could do Sergey Spivak or even Marcin Tybura. It kind of depends who you want to fight for the belt next. The next number 1 contender is Ciryl Gane. I don't know what you do with Alexander Volkov now. Maybe you could do him versus Jailton Almeida. And if they do that, then you can't do a rematch between Sergey and Blades. At that point, you just have to do Sergey Pavlovich versus Sergey Spivak or Marcin Tybura. And as for Jairzinho Rozenstruik, a fight between him and Derek Lewis is perfect. So that's going to be interesting. Rozenstruik's more of a counterpuncher. He wades back a lot, but Derek Lewis did knock out Volkov. We tried to do that, even though he was getting torn to pieces throughout that whole fight and just somehow landed the big right overhand, which is one of the best knockouts in his career. Then what about Vinicius Oliveira defeating Said Nurmagomedov by unanimous decision, 29-28, and he was injured too. He had a rib injury, but still didn't stop him from throwing haymakers for 3 rounds. And it's crazy because Said gassed out. Said looked amazing in the first round. He got slower in the second and exhausted in the third. Oliveira was slowing down too, but the guy had an injured rib and he still outlasted Said. That is crazy. That is such a crazy performance right there. Not the most technical fighter. He's swinging crazy haymakers and kicks and stuff like that. Scrambles are wild too. But man, the guy's got heart. He has a chin. He has a chin 8 spinning back fist and head kicks to the face. Did not phase him whatsoever and just kept fighting. That's a will of a fighter right there. But Said exploded way too much in the beginning of the fight. I mean, he was throwing out crazy spinning attacks, flying knees, jumping kicks, explosive movements all throughout the octagon. And it was just too much. I mean, he did drop Oliveira with a spinning back kick to the face. I don't know if 100% landed or it just like pushed him back when he covered up against it. But there was a head clash as well that seemed to have hurt Oliveira. And the guy just battled through all of it. Rib injury, head clash, spinning back kick to the face, spinning elbow to the face, high kicks to the face, and somehow fought his way all the way to a decision, winning the fight. Amazing performance, man. The Ziam defeats Mike Davis by unanimous decision, 30-27. This is a different kind of fight, man. I didn't expect Mike Davis to come out there basically only grappling. I mean, he threw a few punches, blitzed him down once with a punching combination, but he pulled guard right at the beginning of the fight. He'd have a crazy calf slicer, and it's insane how Ziam got out of that. But the boxing skills weren't there. The movement wasn't there. Like, even the Mike Davis that we saw in his last fight, which was a while ago, looked like did not show up for this fight. I don't know if he had an injury or something like that, but Mike Davis definitely looked off. His jiu-jitsu looked amazing, just striking not so much. And Ziam had good takedowns. His striking looked good. He was fast, snappy punches. A great fight altogether. And I think Ziam should get a top 15 opponent next. Maybe Edson Barboza. That would be a great fight. 2 lanky strikers. Both guys can wrestle somewhat. I would say Ziam is a better wrestler. But if they just strike, that'd be an amazing fight, man. Muhammad Naimov versus Kaan Ofli was a decent fight. Both fighters hurt each other. Naimov rocked him with a right lead jab, hook kind of punch, and Ofli rocked Naimov with a left hook while they got into a trade, exchanging punches with each other. And in the beginning of the third round, Naimov threw a spinning hook kick. It seemed like it was partially blocked. Now, Kaan Ofli did go into the clinch at the third round where, it seemed like he needed to get a knockout, but he was landing punches from there. He was disengaging from the clinch and ripping shots at the body and head very well. So he just wasn't able to get the finish. The better fighter won. Good win from Muhammad Naimov. And then what about the GOAT Shamil Gaziev, the Blob King, defends his throne against Thomas Peterson, who said that he was watching the Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk fight, preparing himself to fight Shamil Gaziev. Well, that's a nice gesture. You're watching 2 of the great boxers, but he underestimated Shamil Gaziev. Watching Usyk and Fury is nothing like watching Shamil Gaziev. Bro, healthy hands, Shamil Gaziev is a new mythical fighter. Just KO'd his opponent with 1 punch, walk-off knockout. And that was pretty much like the main thing he was doing in the fight, just throwing the right hand. Wasn't looping it too much, straight down the center, or just a slight curve with it. It was great to see at least a heavyweight fight end by a finish. And let's do Gaziev versus Tai Tuivasa, the next blob to try to take the throne from Shamil Gaziev. Then Terrance McKinney making easy work of Damir Hadzovic. He just overwhelmed him, man, with all those crazy angular punches, crazy high kicks, and then it was Damir who shot a takedown. This guy's a striker. The last thing he wanted to do was wrestle with Terrance McKinney, but he was losing the fight. The jab was landing, the uppercuts, the straight right. It looked like Damir kind of panicked and he needed something to work. So he went for the single leg. McKinney went for the guillotine, reversed him on top, got the back. Great use of the downward elbows and then finished him off with ground and pound. Good win from Terrance McKinney, man. And calling out Chris Duncan is a decent fight, man. Then Jasmine defeated Mayra Bueno Silva by unanimous decision. The striking wasn't anything crazy, but the grappling was really good. Getting the mount, going for the arm triangle in the third round, multiple scrambles throughout the fight. But Mayra Bueno Silva, man, she just marches forward, not like technical footwork. The striking isn't that technical. She threw some good elbows, but looked like the much slower fighter. She looked faster compared to the bantamweights than she does to the flyweights. And I see as to why she went up to the bantamweight division. She might just be a better fighter up there. Just because she doesn't have such a big like speed disadvantage. I mean, she hits hard in that weight class too. Jasmine was able to outstrike her, slipping the shots, landing her own counter punches, straight into the lead hook combos. Solid performance by Jasmine. And she should probably fight Vivian Araújo next. And then Bogdan Grad TKOs Lucas Alexander in the second round. Really scrappy, crazy aggression, just going after Lucas Alexander. He did get pieced up. I mean, some of those combinations were just landing on him. At one point in the first round, Lucas Alexander landed like a 4-strike combination, but Bogdan Grad kept going forward. Look for the big hooks, the big haymakers, not the most technical striking, but just overwhelming. You're seeing a lot of this style in the UFC now. Just a trend of this aggressive, fast-paced, overwhelming styles mixed with striking and wrestling, which is very important, right? He was the better grappler of the two, even though he did shoot some takedowns and got reversed. I think he was committing too much into his takedowns, but it's his UFC debut, you know? He might have UFC jitters, he might just wanted to bring on the best performance possible and just overdid it in moments. But then in the second round, he was more patient and it was working for him. He wasn't getting hit as much. He was defending shots better, even grabbed a kick, landed the overhand on Lucas Alexander, eventually got the top position and just rained down ground and pound shots, man. It looked like he was not going to stop. This guy was not tired at all, which might be his biggest strength going into these fights is that cardio. And then we got Hamdy versus Jamal. Am I the only one that thought that Jamal won the fight? I didn't see anybody's takes on it, but it looked like Jamal won that fight. I mean, he was landing jabs throughout the whole thing, straight rights, a few left hooks. Hamdy had some body kicks, and the wrestling in the first round was excellent, but where was the takedowns? He's a Greco-Roman wrestler, but at least shoot a takedown so then you can clinch up. He tried to kickbox with Jamal Pogues. That made no sense. And one of the judges scored it 30-27 for Jamal, and two of the judges scored it 29-28 for Hamdy. That's crazy. I thought 29-28 Jamal Pogues. Hamdy was slowing down throughout the fight, but then once he hit like a constant pace that was a lot slower than what he was fighting in the first round with, he was able to keep up with that pace and not gas out. But man, he has to wrestle. He's not a kickboxer. He could use the takedowns to land his own strikes, but to just merely kickbox and not even feint like you're gonna go for takedowns, it's not gonna work against a lot of the better heavyweights. I mean, it didn't work against Jamal Pogues. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jamal Pogues should have won that fight. But I hope you guys enjoy the fights as well. And we got the pay-per-view card next week. Dricus versus Strickland and Jean-Willy versus Tatiana Suarez. Those two fights are going to be great. Hopefully it's an underrated card, right? Hopefully that one performs well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.